Yeah, welcome to reality. This is the world we live in. I don't see how a God helps us that. All you're doing is saying, well, my God says this. And then the next person's like, well, no, my God says that. Or someone says, I worship the same God, but I believe he said something different. Christians can't agree. Jews, Hindus, Muslims all disagree on fundamental questions of like, I know Christians who say God supports gay marriage. I know Christians who don't, who think they're the same God doesn't support gay marriage.
Right, let's get into this one because honestly, it has been living rent free in my head since I first watched it. Dr. Phil Zuckerman, a sociologist who has spent his career studying how secular societies actually function, is back in the hot seat against Andrew Wilson, a Christian debater who has made it his mission to prove that secular humanism is philosophically hollow at its core. The question on the table is which ethical framework actually produces a better world? And by this point in the debate, both of them are going for broke. Trust me when I say the final stretch of this exchange is worth every second. There is a moment near the end where Phil says something so clean and so direct that I had to pause and just think about it for a minute. Here, before we get going, drop a comment and let me know what country or city you are watching from. I genuinely love knowing where this community stretches to, and I try to read every single one. All right, let's get into it.
This might be a good time to go into the Q&A. Do want to say, folks, a huge thank you to both of our guests. As this is our first time having Dr. Zuckerman. Do appreciate being here, Dr. Zuckerman. I know that this is, I would say Andrew is, if anyone's going to be a challenge, it's going to be Andrew. And so we appreciate you being with us and staying for this debate. We're going to jump into the questions. If you haven't yet,
I don't even understand though. Like this debate wasn't even contentious. Like it wasn't even super content. Like I don't know. It didn't even seem very contentious to me.
So what's the question?
we're going to jump right.
Question.
We're going to jump right into these. And if you haven't yet, folks, hit that like button. We do appreciate it. We also know that there have been some major connection issues. I am very sorry for that. That is something new. I have not seen it, and I don't know what caused it. So I am looking into that. Thank you for your question. And we are, of course, looking for sincere questions. Let's see. I don't understand this. Wilson Garcia said, Andrew, you wouldn't serve minorities born here?
I don't even know what he's talking about. I think he's referencing my intro where I said, look, what we're really talking about here is force. And then I gave examples of what secular humanists would use force for, like freedom of association, for instance. They could use force in that category and relatively actually would because they believe in the concept of universal rights.
You got it. This one coming
Whether
in
I would do it personally or not has no bearing on that whatsoever.
This one from Dustin Buck says, Andrew Wilson, if it's in the Bible that thou shalt not steal, wouldn't that imply that property rights are a thing?
Well, I mean, it could, but we would have to get down to the nitty gritty about what we considered ownership and property to be. And then if you say that there's a right, I would say that perhaps we could phrase it as a duty not to steal more than a right to not be stolen from. But even if it was the case that I granted rights and gave that as my accounting for rights, my opposition thinks that rights are just bullshit, made up nonsense, which I think is fair. That's fair enough for him to say. But then it just reduces to the idea of authority and power and him just wanting Christians to give it to secular humanists. There's no way around that. If he postulates that rights ought be universal, therefore prescribed, he's prescribing force be universal.
This one from Rachel Wilson. Dr. Zuckerman, wouldn't it be the case that you had better let all of the prisoners out of jail when you go back to work because locking them up in there causes them suffering?
This is the moment that tells you everything about how Andrew Wilson debates. And I need you to really sit with what just happened here because it is more revealing than it looks. Phil Zuckerman has just spent nearly an hour engaging every single question Andrew threw at him. Yes to this, no to that, I agree here, I disagree there. Precise, honest, direct. And at the end of all of it, Phil says he genuinely does not know what conclusion Andrew thinks he has reached. And here's the thing that is not Phil being evasive. That is Phil accurately describing what happened, because Andrew spent the entire debate constructing an elaborate philosophical maze and then declaring himself the winner for building it. And then watch what Andrew does the moment the Q&A starts. He immediately goes back to his audience and explains his own argument again. He says it just reduces to the idea of authority and power and him wanting Christians to give it to secular humanists. And this is what blows my mind. Andrew has been repeating this same sentence for an hour, but restating a conclusion is not the same as proving one. You can say the same thing 100 times and it does not become more true. Here is what people don't realize about this style of argument. It is called the Motte and Bailey fallacy. You make a bold, dramatic claim. Secular humanism is just force and has no grounding, and when challenged, you retreat to a much simpler, defensible position. Well, I'm just saying rights need enforcement. Then when the pressure eases, you go back to the bold claim. Andrew does this constantly throughout this debate, and Phil never quite pins him on it. But the audience can see it if they know what to look for. Phil's answer about Lewis and Clark is actually more philosophically interesting than it sounds. Humans throughout all of recorded history have been constructing collective agreements about how to live, long before any organized religion showed up to claim credit for the idea.
Suffering, yeah, that was my point, but...
So this is, I guess I'm a John Stuart Million or whatever. Like, I guess this is, that question to me is sort of silly, but I'll do the best I can. I believe that humans collectively can agree on certain ways they want to live, and they can agree that when people violate those, there can be certain consequences. Those consequences can be nonviolent or violent. So we could say, well, if you drive drunk, we're going to remove your right to drive, and we're not going to imprison you, but we will take that right away. You're going to lose your driver's license. Or we could say, if you drive drunk, we're going to hit you with 40 lashes. I mean, we can decide what those consequences are. I'm reading a book right now on Lewis and Clark's expedition, and when people in their group did something wrong, they had a court martial and a trial, and all right, you get 50 lashes because you stole somebody's rations, and they would whip them. So we get to decide, and this is what humans have been doing for all of recorded history, making rules to live by and deciding what those consequences ought to be when they are violated. And there's no universal people
by force.
Right, or not. So,
and then by force.
Well, do you want to take over, Andrew?
Well, I mean, I can participate in the super chat as well.
No, you got it. I was trying to develop a thought, but you can take over.
Want to give you a chance to finish that thought, Dr. Zuckerman.
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you during a debate? It's terrible. I'm a terrible guy.
Well, let's give him a chance to finish the thought. We'll give you a chance, Dr. Zuckerman.
Good. I'm good. If that person who asked that question doesn't understand how these things work, I don't think anything I could say could make sense.
This one from Bubblegum Gun says,
I can make it make sense. What's going on here is that there's the ideological divide is just over force. It's a prescription of rights. So Christians say, okay, well, we believe in these universals just like you do. I understand that these universals are going to reduce to enforcement. Since they're going to reduce to enforcement, who's best served by holding the access to force? The secular humanists say they are. That's really what it comes down to. And I say they're not, and we are.
This one from, I'll give you a chance to respond if you'd like, Dr. Zuckerman, because the question was originally addressed to you. Otherwise, I can go to the next one.
I'm good.
Bubblegum Gun said, Dr. Zuckerman, what if there's a culture that decides that, they do something like Nazi Germany, where they decide that they're doing their own thing and they say, this is like what we think is best for our society. What gives you the right to say that our society standard is better?
Yeah, welcome to reality. This is the world we live in. I don't see how a God helps us that. All you're doing is saying, well, my God says this. And then the next person's like, well, no, my God says that. Or someone says, I worship the same God, but I believe he said something different. Christians can't agree. Jews, Hindus, Muslims all disagree on fundamental questions of like, I know Christians who say God supports gay marriage. I know Christians who don't, who think they're the same God doesn't support gay marriage. I know Christians who believe that God wants there to be interracial marriage. And I know Christians who think so adding a supernatural God actually just makes it all the worse. So to me, we have to engage with each other. Different cultures, it's an empirical fact that different cultures have different norms and values. We have to figure out how we're going to live on this planet together. And sometimes we have to resort to force. Sometimes we resort to persuasion. I mean, sometimes, should you chop a child's foreskin off their penis? That's a violent act. To some cultures, it's noble and moral. And in other cultures, it's violent and immoral. So do we take up guns or do we try to discuss? My answer to that, I don't have a magic wand that can just tell a culture, you ought to believe this way. We're all in a fucking ship. We disagree on whether we should eat animals or not. We disagree on what to eat, who to sleep with, how to behave, all of these things. That's reality. So,
oh, this is the one. This is the moment I have been waiting for this entire reaction. An audience member asks the question that Andrew has been setting up all debate. What do you do when a society democratically decides to do something monstrous? And Andrew is sitting there thinking, this is finally the kill shot. This is finally where Phil has nowhere to go. And Phil's response is instant. He does not hesitate. He does not fumble. He looks straight at the question and says, welcome to reality. This is the world we live in. I don't see how a God helps us that. And then he dismantles the entire premise of Andrew's debate strategy in about 30 seconds. You have to understand what Phil is doing here. He is not dodging the question. Yet he is pointing out that the alternative Andrew is proposing, appeal to God as the moral anchor, does not resolve the problem. It makes it catastrophically worse. Think about this carefully. If the answer to moral disagreement between cultures is God, then which God? Whose interpretation? Christians cannot agree among themselves. Andrew's own tradition is shattered into thousands of denominations that disagree on foundational moral questions. Phil personally knows Christians who hold completely opposite positions on major social issues, and they both claim the same: God told them they are right. This is a point that philosophers have been making since at least the Enlightenment, and it never gets old because it never gets answered. Leibniz called this the problem of divine command theory in the 17th century. If morality comes from God's commands, whose commands and how do we know them? The history of religious conflict is largely the history of that question going unanswered while people suffer the consequences of the silence. Andrew has no response to any of this. None.
Just saying, well, my God says this isn't going to help us. In fact, it usually makes it worse because as soon as you say you're on God's side, then there's nothing to appeal to and there's no common ground. It's just, well, if it's God, that's that. So I think your question is a deeply profound question. I don't have a great answer other than to say we have to figure it out. And no, there's no magical umpire. And even if there were a magical umpire saying do this, then we're just do we all hear the same command from that God? Doesn't seem that way. Mormons hear a different command than Buddhists, than Muslims. Even Muslims can't agree. Even Christians can't agree. So this notion that a God, first of all, you would need to prove to me that there is a God. And then second of all, you'd have to prove to me that you're getting God's correct message. And good luck proving that. It's impossible. So what I would say to you is, yes, there are cultures that do horrible things, in my opinion. I can't say in some grand way, but from my cultural vantage point and from my experience in life, I feel like they're doing horrible things. I would like them to stop. Is the best way force? Maybe. That's what the Civil War was about. We had to fucking take up arms, right? Maybe sometimes you can do things without violence, through persuasion. India was able to kick the British out through nonviolent means. I mean, so, but what's so strange to me is that, Andrew has just never, it's like I have to somehow defend natural conclusions based on observation and suffering and heart rates and hunger, but he doesn't have to prove that there's a magical invisible deity. It's just sort of taken for granted. So unless he can provide some proof, he and I are in basically the same boat. The only difference is I'm not adding anything. I'm not adding a god to my mix. I'm just saying, here we are.
That final line from Phil is one of the most honest things I have heard in any debate in this space. And it deserves to be taken seriously because of what it actually means. Phil is not saying secular humanism has all the answers. He is not claiming to have solved the problem of moral disagreements across cultures. He is saying, I am standing in the same uncertainty that every human being stands in. I just refuse to paper over that uncertainty with an answer I cannot verify. And if you claim that God resolves the uncertainty while simultaneously being unable to prove God exists or prove you are correctly interpreting what God wants, then you have not actually solved anything. You have just added a layer of unverifiable assertion on top of the same problem everyone else is dealing with. What makes this especially powerful is how Phil handles the question about cultures doing horrible things. He does not pretend he has a magic solution. He says, yes, there are cultures doing horrible things in his view, and he uses a real documented historical example, pointing to how nonviolent resistance allowed India to end British colonial rule without a military confrontation. That is not abstract philosophy. That is a recorded historical fact about how human moral persuasion without divine authority can actually change the behavior of an entire empire. Andrew asked all debate for Phil to ground his ethics in something beyond preference. And what Phil is showing here is that his ethics are grounded in shared human experience, in measurable suffering, in documented history, in the observable fact that people across cultures broadly want to avoid pain and live with dignity. That is not nothing. That is actually quite a lot, and it does not require an invisible being to make it real. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.